Everyone in this room thought the Mafia Boss had chosen the perfect woman to stand beside him. They were wrong. The woman he hired to complete his image was the only person brave enough to show him the truth. The grand ballroom in downtown Manhattan was filled with elegant lights, expensive suits, and conversations between people who were used to getting what they wanted. Every guest knew the name Nathaniel Romano. The Mafia Boss was known as a man of influence, discipline, and success. His presence alone changed the atmosphere of any room he entered. People respected him, admired his achievements, and carefully considered every word they spoke around him. But on this particular evening, everyone was watching the woman standing beside him. Emma Carter was not the person they expected to see. She was confident, graceful, and completely comfortable in her own presence. But she did not belong to the world of luxury and power that surrounded Nathaniel. At least, that was what everyone assumed. Nathaniel had hired Emma to be his date for the evening. It was supposed to be simple. She would accompany him to an important event, help create the right impression, and disappear from his world afterward. He believed every problem had a practical solution, and this was no different. He needed someone by his side, and Emma was the right choice. What Nathaniel did not expect was that Emma was not interested in playing a role. From the moment she arrived, she noticed things others ignored. She noticed how people admired Nathaniel's success, but rarely spoke to him honestly. She noticed how every conversation around him was about his reputation, his influence, and his accomplishments. Almost nobody asked about the person behind the image. Emma Carter had always believed that people revealed themselves through the smallest details. She was not impressed by expensive clothing, powerful names, or impressive titles. She paid attention to kindness, respect, and the way someone treated people who could do nothing for them in return. That was why Nathaniel caught her attention, not because of his power, but because of the distance he created around himself. During the evening, Nathaniel introduced Emma to several guests who immediately judged her based on assumptions. They expected someone beside a man like Nathaniel to fit a certain image. Emma noticed the looks and quiet whispers, but she did not let them affect her. She had spent enough time understanding people to know that judgment often revealed more about the person judging than the person being judged. Nathaniel, however, saw something different. He saw that Emma was not trying to impress anyone. She was simply being herself. Later, during a conversation with several guests, Nathaniel made a casual comment about relationships and appearances. He believed he was saying something harmless, but Emma noticed the deeper meaning behind his words. She looked at him calmly and said, "Maybe the problem is not finding someone who fits into your world. Maybe the problem is believing everyone else should change to fit yours." The room became silent. Everyone expected Nathaniel to respond. They expected anger, pride, or a reminder of who he was. But the Mafia Boss simply looked at Emma with surprise. For the first time in a long time, someone had challenged him without trying to gain anything from him. And in that quiet moment, Nathaniel realized the woman he hired for appearances might be the only person in the room who truly saw him. The silence after Emma Carter's unexpected words felt heavier than any argument could have been. The guests around Nathaniel Romano waited for a reaction because they knew the Mafia Boss was not someone people challenged easily. Throughout his life, Nathaniel had built a reputation around control. He knew how to handle negotiations, how to make decisions, and how to maintain the image that made others respect him. But Emma had done something no one else had done before. She had looked beyond the reputation and spoken to the person behind it. Instead of feeling offended, Nathaniel found himself thinking about her words long after the evening ended. The following morning, Emma returned to her normal routine. She was used to helping people understand relationships, but she never expected one conversation to stay on her mind as much as this one did. She had met many successful people who struggled with connection, but Nathaniel was different. Most people wanted others to notice their achievements. Nathaniel seemed to have built an entire world where nobody was allowed to notice anything else. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel contacted Emma and asked to meet. She expected him to discuss the event or perhaps explain why he disagreed with her comments. Instead, when she arrived at his office, she found a man who seemed more curious than defensive. The room was quiet, overlooking the busy streets of Manhattan below. Nathaniel did not begin with an explanation. He simply asked a question. "Why did you say that?" Emma looked at him carefully. "Say what?" "That I expect people to fit into my world." Emma realized he was not looking for an argument. He genuinely wanted to understand. So she answered honestly. She explained that she had spent years studying how people connected with each other. She had learned that many relationships failed not because people were incompatible, but because they entered them expecting someone else to complete a life they had already designed. Nathaniel listened without interrupting. For a man who was known for having an answer to everything, his willingness to simply listen surprised her. "You think I do that?" he asked. Emma nodded. "I think you are used to people adapting to you because your position allows it. But connection does not work that way." Those words stayed between them. Nathaniel looked toward the city outside his window. For years, he had believed that being respected meant being strong enough that nobody could question him. But Emma was showing him another perspective. Maybe real strength came from being open enough to hear something uncomfortable. He asked her about her work and why she was so confident in understanding people. Emma explained that she did not believe anyone was impossible to understand. She believed everyone had a story behind the way they acted. "People usually show you what they want the world to see," she said. "But the truth is usually found in what they try hardest to hide." Nathaniel understood why that statement affected him. He had spent years creating an image that others admired. He had never considered how much of himself was missing from that image. Before Emma left, Nathaniel surprised her with one final question. "Do you think someone like me can actually change?" Emma paused and answered calmly. "I think the question is not whether you can change. The question is whether you are willing to stop pretending you have nothing to learn." For the first time in a long time, Nathaniel did not feel challenged by someone's honesty. He felt invited to discover something about himself. And that was the moment the woman he hired for appearances became the person who made him question everything he thought he knew. The conversation between Nathaniel Romano and Emma Carter changed something neither of them expected. What started as a simple arrangement for one evening had slowly become a series of moments where Nathaniel found himself questioning the way he viewed people, relationships, and even himself. For years, the Mafia Boss had believed that understanding others meant knowing their intentions, their goals, and what they wanted from him. Emma showed him that true understanding required something different. It required patience, attention, and the willingness to see beyond appearances. Emma continued helping people through her work as a relationship consultant, but she noticed that Nathaniel's curiosity was different from most people she met. He was not looking for a quick answer or a simple solution. He was genuinely trying to understand why his way of approaching life had created distance between him and others. One afternoon, Nathaniel invited Emma to a small cafe away from the busy streets where he usually spent his time. It was not a place filled with important guests or conversations about business. It was a quiet space where people came to enjoy a simple meal and honest conversations. Emma immediately noticed that Nathaniel seemed more relaxed there. Without the pressure of his reputation surrounding him, he appeared less like a powerful figure and more like a person searching for answers. "You chose a very different place from where we usually meet," Emma said. Nathaniel looked around and smiled. "Slightly. Maybe I am trying to understand what you already knew." Emma asked what he meant. He explained that he had spent years believing that everything valuable had to be connected to success, influence, or achievement. But recently, he had started noticing that the moments he remembered most were the ones where he felt genuinely connected with another person. Emma appreciated his honesty, but she also reminded him that awareness was only the beginning. "Knowing something needs to change is different from actually changing," she said. Nathaniel nodded because he understood that growth required more than a realization. It required action. Over the next few weeks, Emma noticed small differences in him. Nathaniel started asking questions before giving answers. He listened to opinions that challenged his own. He showed appreciation for people whose efforts were often overlooked. These actions might have seemed small to others, but Emma understood their importance. Changing habits built over many years required consistency. However, Emma also began noticing something about herself. She was comfortable helping Nathaniel explore his emotions, but she rarely allowed others to do the same for her. She was always the person who listened, encouraged, and guided. She was not used to being the person someone wanted to understand. Nathaniel began asking questions about her life, her dreams, and the reasons behind her confidence. At first, Emma found those questions difficult to answer. She was used to focusing on other people's stories, not her own. One evening, as they walked through Manhattan after dinner, Nathaniel told her something she did not expect to hear. "You spend so much time helping people believe they deserve something better," he said. Have you ever asked yourself if you believe the same thing? Emma became quiet because she knew the question was honest. In that moment, she realized their connection was changing in a way neither of them had planned. She was no longer simply teaching Nathaniel how to understand others. He was helping her recognize parts of herself she had ignored. And for the first time, both of them understood that the greatest changes often begin when someone sees a truth you were not ready to see yourself. The more time Nathaniel Romano spent with Emma Carter, the more he realized that the greatest challenge in his life was not managing his responsibilities. It was learning how to let people see the person behind everything he had built. For years, Nathaniel had believed that keeping control was the safest way to move through the world. He carefully planned every decision, protected his reputation, and avoided showing uncertainty. But Emma had slowly revealed something he never considered before. A person could protect themselves so much that they accidentally created the very distance they feared. Emma noticed the difference in Nathaniel because she understood that real change was not measured by promises. It was measured by actions that continued even when nobody was watching. She saw him becoming more patient, more thoughtful, and more willing to listen. He was no longer trying to prove that he had all the answers. He was learning to appreciate the value of different perspectives. One evening, Nathaniel invited Emma to a charity event where many influential people from Manhattan gathered. It was the kind of place where reputation mattered, where everyone carefully presented the best version of themselves. Emma remembered the first night she stood beside Nathaniel and how everyone judged her before knowing anything about her. But this time, something felt different. Nathaniel did not introduce her as someone hired to accompany him. He introduced her as someone whose opinion he respected. That small difference carried more meaning than anyone in the room realized. During the event, several guests approached Nathaniel and asked about Emma. Their curiosity was obvious, and some still struggled to understand why someone like her had earned such a respected place beside him. Nathaniel listened calmly before responding. In the past, he might have ignored the questions or allowed his reputation to answer for him. Instead, he spoke honestly. Emma does not stand beside me because she needs my name. She stands beside me because she sees the person behind it. The room became quiet. Emma looked at him with surprise because she understood what those words represented. Nathaniel was no longer protecting an image. He was recognizing someone's value. Later that evening, they stepped outside into the cool Manhattan air. The city lights reflected across the streets as they walked together. Emma told Nathaniel that she noticed how much he had changed. He smiled and admitted that he noticed it too. I thought respect came from making people recognize my strength, he said. Now I think respect comes from recognizing the strength in others. Emma knew that was the difference between the man she first met and the man standing beside her now. He had not changed because someone forced him to. He changed because he finally understood something deeper about connection. However, Nathaniel was not the only one facing a personal challenge. Emma began realizing that she had spent so much time proving she could stand on her own that she forgot allowing someone to support her did not make her weaker. Nathaniel saw the confidence she showed the world, but he also noticed the moments when she carried more than she needed to. For the first time, Emma experienced what it felt like to be understood without having to explain everything. As they continued walking beneath the city lights, both of them recognized that their journey was becoming something neither had expected. The woman who challenged the Mafia Boss was no longer just someone teaching him about connection. She was someone discovering it alongside him. The relationship between Nathaniel Romano and Emma Carter continued to change in ways neither of them expected. What began as a simple arrangement for a single evening had become something much more meaningful. Nathaniel had originally believed that Emma was there to help him maintain an image, someone who could stand beside him and create the appearance of a perfect life. But every conversation with her showed him how wrong that assumption had been. Emma was never interested in being part of a performance. She cared about honesty, and that was exactly what made her different from everyone else he had known. Nathaniel began to understand that the reason Emma challenged him was not because she wanted to prove him wrong. She challenged him because she believed he was capable of becoming better. For a man who had spent years surrounded by people who either admired him or avoided disagreeing with him, that kind of honesty was rare. One afternoon, Nathaniel asked Emma to join him for a walk through Central Park. It was a simple request, far away from business meetings and formal events. Emma noticed that he seemed more comfortable in places where nobody expected him to act like the powerful figure everyone recognized. As they walked along the paths surrounded by trees and quiet conversations from strangers, Nathaniel admitted something he had never said before. "I used to think people respected me because they were impressed by what I built," he said. "Now I wonder if they respected me because they never had a chance to know anything else." Emma listened carefully because she understood the importance of that realization. Nathaniel was not losing his confidence. He was learning that confidence did not require keeping everyone at a distance. Later that week, Nathaniel invited Emma to attend another event with him. This time, however, the situation was different. He did not ask her to pretend or represent a certain image. He simply wanted her there because he valued her presence. During the event, Emma watched as Nathaniel interacted with people differently. He asked questions instead of giving instructions. He listened instead of assuming. He showed appreciation instead of expecting recognition. These changes were small, but they revealed something important. Nathaniel was no longer changing because Emma told him he needed to. He was changing because he finally understood why it mattered. However, the evening also brought a moment of reflection for Emma. She noticed how naturally Nathaniel had started seeing the things she often ignored about herself. He noticed when she was tired. He noticed when she avoided talking about her own dreams. He noticed when she focused so much on helping others that she forgot to care for herself. "You always tell people they deserve to be valued," Nathaniel said. "But you rarely allow yourself to believe the same thing." Emma smiled because she knew he was right. She had spent years being the person who guided others through uncertainty, but she had not considered that she also deserved someone who would understand her. For the first time, she allowed herself to be seen without needing to explain her strength. As the evening ended, Nathaniel and Emma stood outside beneath the city lights. They both realized that something had shifted between them. They were no longer two people from different worlds trying to understand each other. They were two people who had discovered that their differences were exactly what allowed them to see what others missed. Nathaniel had learned that a person's value was never defined by their status. Emma had learned that accepting care did not take away her independence. And together, they were discovering that the most unexpected connections often begin when two people stop pretending and start being honest. The changes in Nathaniel Romano were becoming impossible for people around him to ignore. Those who had known him for years noticed something different in the way he carried himself. He was still the same successful man with the same responsibilities, but the distance that once surrounded him was slowly disappearing. Nathaniel was no longer focused only on maintaining control. He was learning that trust was built through the small moments when people felt respected and valued. Emma Carter noticed those changes more than anyone because she understood how difficult it was for someone like Nathaniel to step away from the habits that had defined his life. She knew that real transformation was not proven through words. It was proven through choices made when nobody expected anything from him. That test came during one of the largest social events of the year in Manhattan. Nathaniel attended with Emma, and once again, the room filled with familiar faces from his world. People who knew his reputation watched carefully, expecting the same confident and untouchable man they had always known. Some were curious about Emma's place beside him. Others quietly wondered why Nathaniel seemed different around her. In the past, Nathaniel would have ignored those opinions or used his influence to control the situation. But this time, he approached it differently. During a conversation with several guests, someone made a subtle comment suggesting that Emma did not belong in their circle. The room became uncomfortable, and everyone waited to see how Nathaniel would respond. Emma remained calm. She had faced judgment before, and she knew her worth did not depend on someone else's approval. Before she could answer, Nathaniel spoke. His voice was calm, but his words carried a meaning that surprised everyone. A person's value is not determined by where they come from or what others expect them to be. It is determined by who they are. The room became quiet. It was not the statement of a man trying to defend his image. It was the statement of someone who had finally learned to recognize the value in another person. Emma looked at Nathaniel and realized that this moment represented something much bigger than a simple response. He was no longer protecting her because he believed she needed protection. He was showing respect because he believed she deserved it. Later that evening, they walked through the city streets together. The lights of Manhattan reflected around them as they talked about how different everything felt compared to the first night they met. Nathaniel admitted that he used to believe power meant never allowing anyone to challenge him. Emma asked what he believed now. He smiled and answered, "I think real strength is being willing to learn from someone who sees what you cannot see yourself." Emma understood that answer because she knew how much courage it took for him to say it. The man she first met believed that success meant standing above others. The man walking beside her now understood that success meant knowing how to stand with others. But as their connection grew stronger, Emma also realized something important. Nathaniel was not the only one changing. He had started to notice the parts of her life that she kept hidden. He saw how much responsibility she carried and how rarely she allowed herself to ask for support. For the first time, Emma experienced what it felt like to be appreciated, not for what she could do for others, but simply for who she was. And in that moment, both of them understood that the greatest transformation was not about becoming different people. It was about finally allowing the best parts of themselves to be seen. The connection between Nathaniel Romano and Emma Carter had reached a point where neither of them could ignore how much they had changed. What started as a simple agreement had become something far more meaningful. Nathaniel no longer saw Emma as someone who was there to complete an image or create the appearance of a perfect life. He saw her as the person who had challenged him, understood him, and encouraged him to become better without ever trying to control his choices. Emma noticed that Nathaniel was no longer searching for approval from the people around him. He was learning to trust his own growth. The Mafia Boss who once believed every situation needed to be managed was discovering that some of the most valuable moments in life could not be planned. They had to be experienced. However, Emma also began facing a truth about herself. For years, she had built her identity around helping others. She was the person people came to when they needed guidance, confidence, or a new perspective. She knew how to recognize when someone was hiding their feelings or avoiding their own happiness. But when it came to her own life, she was not always as honest with herself. Nathaniel started noticing those moments. He saw how Emma always encouraged others to believe in their worth, yet she sometimes struggled to accept the same kindness for herself. One evening, they sat together in a quiet restaurant overlooking the city. The conversation was different from their usual discussions because Nathaniel was no longer asking how to change. Instead, he was asking how to understand her. "You have spent so much time helping people find what they deserve," he said. "Have you ever stopped to think about what you deserve?" Emma smiled because the question was unexpected. She was used to being the person who asked others that question. She was not used to someone asking it about her. She admitted that she often felt responsible for being strong because people depended on her. Nathaniel listened carefully before responding. "Being strong does not mean you never need anyone. It means you know your value even when you allow someone else to care about you." Those words stayed with Emma because they reflected something she had never considered. She had always believed independence meant handling everything alone. Nathaniel helped her see that independence and connection could exist together. Meanwhile, Nathaniel continued learning from Emma in ways he never expected. He discovered that compassion was not a weakness and that admitting uncertainty did not reduce his confidence. He became more comfortable showing appreciation, expressing gratitude, and allowing people to know him beyond his reputation. The people around him began seeing the difference. Some were surprised because they had never seen Nathaniel so open and thoughtful. Others simply noticed that the man they once viewed as distant now created a different atmosphere wherever he went. One afternoon, Emma and Nathaniel walked through Central Park, talking about how much had changed since the night they first met. Emma laughed when she remembered how certain she had been that he would never listen to her advice. Nathaniel smiled and admitted she was right. "I probably would not have listened to anyone else," he said. "But you did not talk to my reputation. You talked to me." Emma looked at him quietly because she understood the meaning behind those words. The person she once challenged was now the person who saw her most clearly. They had started as two people from completely different worlds, but they discovered something neither expected. The greatest connections are not created when someone finds a person who completes them. They are created when two people help each other become more honest versions of themselves. As time passed, Nathaniel Romano began to understand that the biggest changes in his life were not the ones people could see from the outside. They were the quiet moments when he made different choices, the moments when he listened instead of assuming, and the moments when he allowed himself to be known. Instead of hiding behind the reputation he had built, The mafia boss who once believed control was the foundation of strength was discovering that trust required something completely different. It required humility. Emma Carter saw that transformation clearly because she had been there from the beginning. She remembered the man who entered every room expecting people to respond to his position before his personality. She remembered how difficult it was for him to accept a perspective that challenged his beliefs. But she also saw the effort he made every day to become someone better. One evening, Nathaniel invited Emma to a private gathering with people who had known him for many years. It was not an event designed to impress anyone. It was simply an opportunity for him to reconnect with people in a more genuine way. Emma noticed that Nathaniel interacted differently now. He asked about people's lives instead of only discussing business. He listened to stories he once would have ignored. He showed appreciation for people who had always worked quietly behind the scenes. The difference was clear. Nathaniel was no longer trying to prove that he was powerful. He was showing that he understood the responsibility that came with influence. During the evening, someone who had known Nathaniel for years approached Emma and admitted that they were surprised by the change they had seen. "I never thought anyone could get him to slow down," the person said. Emma smiled because she knew the truth. She had not changed Nathaniel. She had simply helped him recognize the person he had the ability to become. Later that night, Nathaniel and Emma stood outside beneath the Manhattan skyline. The city was filled with movement and noise, but their conversation was calm. Nathaniel looked back on the first night they met and admitted that he had expected Emma to be impressed by his world. Instead, she had questioned it. "You were the first person who did not care about what I could offer," he said. "You cared about who I was." Emma looked at him and replied, "Because everyone deserves to be seen for more than what they have." Those words reminded Nathaniel of how much his perspective had changed. He had spent years believing that people valued him because of his achievements. Now he understood that the most meaningful relationships were built when people valued each other beyond achievements. But as they continued talking, Nathaniel noticed something important about Emma. She was still the same confident woman who challenged him from the beginning, but there was a part of her that she rarely showed. She was always ready to stand for others, but she sometimes struggled to believe that others would stand for her. Nathaniel wanted her to understand what she had taught him. A person did not become less strong by allowing someone to care about them. Emma listened quietly because hearing those words from him meant more than she expected. The man she once believed needed to learn about connection had become someone who could offer it. And in that moment, they both realized their journey was no longer about proving who was right. It was about understanding that two people from different worlds could create something meaningful when they chose respect over assumptions. The journey between Nathaniel Romano and Emma Carter had begun with a simple arrangement, but it ended with a lesson neither of them expected to learn. What started as a night designed to create an image became a connection built on honesty, respect, and understanding. Nathaniel had entered Emma's life believing that everything could be organized, planned, and controlled. He believed that the right person was someone who could fit perfectly into the world he had already created. But Emma showed him that the strongest relationships were not built by finding someone who matched your expectations. They were built by finding someone who challenged you to become better. Months after their first meeting, Nathaniel was still recognized as a powerful and successful man in Manhattan. His reputation remained, and people still respected his achievements. But the difference was no longer hidden. The people around him noticed the way he treated others. They noticed how he listened more carefully, how he showed appreciation more openly, and how he no longer measured every interaction by what he could gain from it. Emma was the person who noticed those changes the most because she understood how difficult that transformation had been. She knew Nathaniel had not simply changed his behavior. He had changed the way he viewed himself and the people around him. One evening, Nathaniel returned to the place where everything began, the elegant ballroom where Emma had first challenged him in front of everyone. The room looked the same. The lights were still bright, the city skyline still stretched beyond the windows, and the guests still carried the same expectations. But Nathaniel was different. This time, he did not arrive with Emma because he needed someone to complete an image. He arrived because he wanted her beside him. As they stood together, Nathaniel looked around the room and remembered the moment when Emma had spoken the truth that nobody else wanted to say. She had not embarrassed him. She had given him a chance to understand himself. "Do you remember the first thing you told me here?" Nathaniel asked with a smile. Emma laughed softly. "I remember that you were not very happy about hearing it. Nathaniel nodded. I was not, but I needed to hear it. Those words showed how far he had come. The man who once believed strength meant never being questioned now understood that growth came from listening to perspectives different from his own. Emma looked at him and realized something important as well. The person she first saw as someone who needed to learn humility had become someone who taught her that accepting support was not a weakness. They had both discovered that independence did not mean standing alone. It meant knowing your value while allowing others to appreciate it too. As the evening continued, Nathaniel and Emma walked through the city streets beneath the lights of Manhattan. They did not need grand promises or perfect plans. They had already learned the most important lesson. A meaningful connection was not created when two people pretended to be perfect. It was created when two people were brave enough to be honest. The woman who had once been hired to stand beside the mafia boss became the person who helped him see beyond his own reputation. The man who once believed he had everything became the person who finally understood what mattered most. And that night, they both realized that the greatest surprises in life are often found when people stop judging appearances and start recognizing the value within each other.